So, Star Citizen 4.5 is coming out this week. It's basically confirmed. In fact, they put out a This Week in Star Citizen yesterday to tell us that it will indeed be coming out this week, and they've released a release candidate on the PTU. But that's not why we're here. We are here for the biggest part of this update, which is engineering. Earlier in the year, Rich Tyrer said something that has stuck in players' minds rent-free for the whole year now, and that is that the patch must go. Not those exact words, but something like it. They want to get these patches out on time because they're depending on hype. They're depending on a rolling population of players who are kind of checking out over the couple of weeks. They've basically taken that quarter-long cycle we used to go through in the 3.x cycle updates and collapsed it into 12 cycles a month or so. This also coincides with their ship releases, so they do need to get patches out in order to match the ships. They will have one more ship coming out this year, and obviously they're going to make a freaking ton of money. But this model has been working for them, so they've been sticking with it. And this 4.5 is no different. This patch is coming out, whether we want it or not, whether engineering is ready or not. It's up to us to just continue to keep testing it, even in the live model of the game, which is still a testing environment. Give them as much feedback as we can, and get this going to a place where we want it to go. I've been covering this over the last couple weeks, and my opinion has shifted over that time, as I'm sure everybody's has, in different places. And I'd like to talk about what seems to be the most persistent problem right now with the delivery of engineering and the players who have been expecting it for a long time. And that is the difference between time to kill and time to delay. What we're going to do is actually go back to a talk that Jared had with Rich Tyrer last year. Now, when Rich Tyrer says something, right, like the patch must go, generally happens. So you're going to be surprised to hear what Rich Tyrer says in this video about engineering and how ships are supposed to die. But before we get to that, we're going to go all the way back to 2018. That's right. It's a classic deep dive, folks. This is one of the good ones. We're going to be taking a trip 2018, 2019, 2021, all the way up till last year to understand what the point of engineering components and time to disable was, why it's going a little bit differently right now, why players are frustrated with it, and how maybe they could change it to be back to the model that they've told us about. About 7 years ago now, no, this will be 8 years in a couple months. Almost 8 years ago now, John Crew actually was still working there. He was pretty involved in vehicles. He always has been. And I'll let you in on a little tidbit of conversation they were having at that time about time to disable, time to kill, and components.
Going forwards, mid to long term, it's going to be talking less about time to kill, more time to disable, to give you that game. Because if you're blowing ships up, there's no way to board them.
He's right.
Do anything interesting like that with it. So,
how are all these shipwrecks out there? Every time you get into a fight, they just blow up.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, obviously we've designed missions and stuff based around shipwrecks. That's the intention. That there'll be a long, protracted, multi-crew engagement.
Yeah.
You need to be able to get out with one share, run to another, change the system, defend yourself.
Yeah, more great things that just fall out of that is they start generating missions themselves. So rather than it being design-placed wrecks, people can start calling for help that they're disabled, need repair, refuel, rearm. They need people to come help them do stuff, need to help them transfer their cargo. And it's the game just sort of,
isn't it? It has to
builds upon itself.
Yeah. You have to
So
have that long.
the idea there is like, and this isn't, when I go over this, it's not to say that this isn't the direction we're going. We are going in this direction. We've made progress on time to disable with the addition of engineering. It's more so specifically when you come down here, it's more so, it's looking at damage penetration, it's looking at armor, it's looking at how damage is transferring to the the power plant in a way that's causing these things to happen faster than would be expected with this kind of a system. And a lot of people were expecting that. For the most part, ship explosions and blowing up in general weren't going to be as common. Again, we're in the PTU still. Like, all of this is active development. It's actively happening as we talk. So this video might be coming out, and they could have made the changes to make this better. They also could have put out a statement about this at this point to say, this is definitively the direction we're going in. Disregard the stuff from earlier. They haven't done that yet, which is why people are very much still asking these questions and debating it in the comments sections and why we're going over it. So this isn't to say that like they are fully against what they used to be about, or that they're going in the opposite direction and they're convicted on it. It's just to say that It is a little confusing at the moment because time to disable was such a focus, and even now it could just be balancing, but it still feels like they are hanging on to this idea that ships do need to be able to be blown up pretty kind of quickly. I love blowing up ships. I think it's beautiful, but I think we should do a specific thing to blow up those ships, and that specific thing should be fairly difficult. Anyways, here's another look at another talk about this whole segment. Again, this is with John Crew and David Coulson, who used to be the head of the flight mechanics, the flight model, and a lot of the flight experience, but eventually moved on.
Actually, it could actually be another strategy to go for the main thrusters of a ship, or even if you're good enough to hit the maneuver thrusters, you can cripple a ship so it can't even roll.
Yeah, at the moment it's very time to kill, and we've always talked about time to disable. You want to be able to board ships that you've taken out. At the moment you can't really do that, but this is a system that allows you to cripple that ship. You've got distortion weapons to do that. You can physically damage them. So It's all building up to that, grabbing hold of other ships.
Because the thrusters are drawing power so dynamically as well, if you, for example, take out the power plant of a ship, they're not going to be able to power any of their thrusters. The ship's going to be completely incapacitated. You just won't be able to move, which is pretty cool.
So even there, the talk, and this is very much before they figured out the design, but even there, they're kind of hypothesizing that you take out the power plant without blowing up the ship, which, maybe with some distortions you could do that. Here's another talk. Same guys, David Coulson, John Crew. They're just talking to Jared about time to disable, time to kill kind of stuff.
To destroy other people, which is something, obviously, we want time to disable to be a thing and time to kill to be significantly longer than that.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
That if you're just jousting, you're just going to be... And then half a minute later, you come back and... It's going to take absolutely forever to do anything effectively. So yeah, there's always going to be people that joust. There's always going to be people that circle strafe. There's always people that are going to turret. Is that the most effective way to fly in the game? Probably not.
Yeah.
And it's all about working out, in my current scenario, in my current environment, with my current ship, what is the most effective thing.
Yep.
That's mostly about flying and combat, right? But they did touch on it there briefly that like they want to have time to disable. They want it to be higher than time to kill. These are all just instances of how much they have put this in people's heads. The point of all of this is just to go over how many times this has come up throughout the years. This is not all the times. This is just a couple I picked out. But to give an idea of why players are looking at time to disable the way they are, why there's so much like conviction around it. Moving on. This is another talk. This is in 2019. Again, John Crew is involved. He's very much involved in almost all of the ship talk. And then Paul Jones has moved on to, I think, Ubisoft, maybe. But he also had a lot to do with the ships in the past. So this is them again talking to the narrative director, one of them, about ship destruction and combat and stuff like that. This is the Retribution, by the way. This is a ship that's not in Star Citizen. It's a UEE ship in construction at the time of Squadron 42, or after.
What are the systems required for Star Citizen ship combat move to time to disable over time to kill, particularly for multi-crew ships, or is the system we have currently the intention for the final game, and we're going to stop working on it? No,
so,
this part.
What we have now is definitely not the final intention.
Yeah.
Two big things to moving to time to disable rather than time to kill. One, physicalized components, like we talked about earlier. So you have to have the items in the right places and be physicalized so you can target them.
We mostly
and
got
two
that.
is moving to a more, I'm going to keep saying physically based damage system. So something we've talked about in the past, and we're still going to do it. So rather than bullets doing 10 damage, they come with a velocity, they come with an energy and a mass, and the game works out how much impact that is, which gives the penetration, which over time weakens the structure of bits of the ship rather than just ticking down a health pool. So when we have all that, then you naturally get items failing, which impacts other areas of the ship rather than just I hit the Gladius on the nose with my fist a million times and eventually
the whole thing is
explodes.
Kind of
Wait a second. What did he just say? That's hilarious. That's what happened in the first 4.5 patches.
Rather than just I hit the Gladius on the nose with my fist a million times and eventually
the whole thing is kind
explodes.
of
Yeah. See, okay, that line right there. Ooh, somebody's gonna quote that. Somebody's going to quote that and pull that up because that's exactly how they're doing it now. They're basically, it's at the point where they're saying once you deplete your hull damage, that damage goes to your power plant and eventually blows the ship up. Now, there's supposed to be armor, which brings in damage mitigation. It's exactly like he was talking about. They wanted to have it to the point where there is armor that will mitigate damage based on the type of weapon you have. You could find that here. Penetration mechanics. Weapons have a penetration value from 1 meter, an example of 1 meter for a size 3 ballistic Gatling. The amount they penetrate depends on the current armor percentage, penetration cone, impact radius, and distance radius all affect area on penetration. All these things have been being affected throughout the PTU as they've shifted their values around and tried to make things a little bit less intense. But it is still at the point where armor does break down pretty quickly, but also there isn't a thickness value to it right now. So they have talked about thickness, and there's supposed to be thickness, but it's not really being used, which might point towards some of their future systems like Maelstrom, which we'll talk about later. Maybe they're waiting on this stuff. The problem, again, is that it's not super clear. It's kind of confusing to people. They've talked about armor. They've talked about damage mitigation, and you can't just punch something until it blows up. But then that is kind of in the patch, and it's sort of what they're working on doing. They're not really making any effort in these patch notes to tell people that it's not headed in that direction. So I'm not sure. Oh, phrasing, right. Okay, yeah. Yeah, thickness and Listen, yeah, I'm not happy with the freaking the terms they're using. I keep seeing people use the term pen thickness or pen value or something, and I'm like, please stop. Please just say penetration. I know penetration is also kind of a loaded word, but pen thickness? Really? Anyways, yeah, the thickness and the armor is supposed to make a difference. That's exactly what John' crew is saying back here. It's just a matter of like, right now it seems like they can't implement it quite how they wanted to, so they're implementing it halfway, but they're not quite telling us that either, so we don't know if they're implementing it halfway, or if it's kind of shifted from this idea. But again, I'll follow up here with another instance of David Coulson talking about this.
It's not a DPS race of just hold your gun down and then eventually the ship explodes. And so the result is that, particularly in this patch and going forward, combat is not like about waiting for the health to go to 0 or something, right? Like you could, like back, a simple naive way of doing it is like, oh, you hold down your button and then the ship blows up. And in the older patches, that was like 2 seconds. But the actual experience, like what Yogi is saying, when you actually have a fight with a real person, it doesn't feel like 2 seconds. And that issue is much more magnified in this patch, which is why this is the way the way we plan to do it.
And of course, we're using the phrase "time to kill," but with physicalized damage and armor and stuff, at some point it's going to morph into a time to disable.
This is Richard Towler. He's pretty involved in control surfaces and vehicle systems. Mark Abent, one of the biggest when it comes to bug. Well, I mean, he's the bug smasher, right? This guy's got a lot of skills. I don't even know exactly what he does, but he keeps things more stable. You guys know Yogi. He does a lot of the flight model stuff as well and has helped a lot with the VR implementation. And then, as I mentioned, David Coulson, who did a lot of the flight model stuff before leaving recently.
I suppose would be a more appropriate term. Yeah.
Well, it also depends what you're targeting too, because now you have sub-targeting and more items are getting physicalized. If you want to just kill the ship, maybe you aim at the power plant and it blows up. Right. If you want to disable it, you shoot out the thrusters, and then if you want to just disable the guns, maybe shoot out the guns. It's going to. The definition of
a win is different.
Yes.
It can be different.
Yeah.
Lays it out pretty plainly, I would say. So that brings us to the talk from last year. Actually, before we get into the talk from last year, let me show you the original design document. Ship repair and maintenance is one of the more confusing design documents, actually. I think of most of the documents we go over from the 2013-2015 time period, this is one that has changed quite a bit. Not necessarily the fact that it's not happening, it's more so like the way that they talked about repair was much more, it seemed like, focused on actual stations, like seated positions where you're doing the repair work instead of going out and doing it yourself. This could still be the case. They could do some kind of ship maintenance stuff like this when it comes to things like the Crucible or the Vulcan, integrate this into drones. But a lot of this is sort of making its way into the game. From this being like an AR display that we'll get when we're using our multi-tool or repair tools, to this material details being included in Maelstrom, as they've talked about literally making all of the things that we're using be made up of the materials they're supposed to be made of. So if you salvage a ship that's made out of titanium, you get titanium instead of just getting repair materials. Then there's reconstruction. They haven't actually talked about this very much, but this was the idea of literally making new parts of your ship. We can't do that, and I don't know if we're going to be able to do that. But scrolling all the way down, patching is the one part that we actually have. Personal multi-tool is here too. But component damage is really the key of engineering. And this is one of the things that I point to show people when you complain about, oh, they're throwing engineering into the game just to make it more complicated. Dude, they had this written down far too long ago. But the idea of component damage was based around subcomponents, actually, and the locational damage that we think it should be. They read here, when your ship takes damage, some of that damage will be transferred from the point of impact on the hull to the nearest system and weapon components. Those components then distribute that damage between itself and whatever subcomponents are attached inside. Subcomponents are the various consumables that are used to run or improve a component or system's behavior. In general, component field repairs consists of turning off whichever component is having problems, replacing the broken subcomponents, and turning the components back on. In very large components like those found on capital ships, there may be multiple actions involved in turning a component off or on, including rerouting power or coolant to other parts of the ship. These actions may also involve the use of an onboard computer. This sounds f***ing sick, man. And I can't tell if, I don't know if they're doing this. Because there's subcomponents in the life support system, and the relay has subcomponents. We could have heat sinks in the power supply, right? We could have, the power conduit is basically a fuse. And then we'll also have subcomponents in our computers. But, what about our shield unit? What about our quantum drive? Yes, pointing a beam at it to heal it is good. I think that should be part of the repair, but I do think we should still stick to this subcomponent idea. In fact, I could probably find a video explaining the idea behind this. Yeah, here we go. So this is what they were doing before.
Manufacturers going along here, and aside each one, you'll see a destroyed state. The idea is that over time, these become worn and eventually destroyed. Hence why you need to replace them. So each one has its own broken variant.
So those were subcomponents, and you can see here they are placed inside of other components.
Inside the interior here, that the sub-items are quite dense and complex in design, especially when compared to the exteriors.
And these are power plants, so they've modeled it out, but I don't know what happened to it.
Another thing that's quite important to us is brand identity. So other than the obvious decals with logos on littered about, we want the forms to describe the manufacturer. So in this Aegis one, you've got a lot of flowing shapes, a lot of double chamfers, quite sophisticated, where in contrast you've got lightning power, where everything's a bit more utilitarian, there's more function over form sort of stuff going on.
Yeah. So there was that, and there were plans for this.
Open up and display the sub-items in front of the player.
And it kind of went along with this design document they have, talking about subcomponents being replaced, but it's not really a thing at this point. So again, it's not in here. The only mention of subcomponents on this whole document is here in life support, where they say contains replaceable filter sub-items. That's it. So sub-items are a thing. Fuses are also a sub-item, inside of the relay, installed in the relay boxes. So I think it would really make a big difference if they could at least tell us if subcomponents are part of the plan or not. But honestly, I don't think they know. So that's the most disappointing part to me. I think the engineering gameplay is plenty fun already. I certainly have fun with it. I think it's going to make for really good gameplay in larger ships. I just think that if this is where they really want to take it, they're falling short, and they're starting to confuse people because, well, here's the video from last year with Rich Tyler and John Crew talking. This isn't just old 7-year-old information.
For the entire spaceship experience, and that's time to kill.
Now, right now in Star Citizen, as players have known it since 2015, your ship can take a few shots and then it goes, poof, fiery explosion. A very impressive fiery explosion. Shout out to Mike Snowden and his team there. But that's not the experience that we've been building towards. And a lot of the changes that we announced at CitizenCon with insurance and whatnot, these are tied into the future direction of spaceships and life on board spaceships. Talk to me about time to kill. How long are these ships supposed to last? Are they supposed to go up like confetti like they currently do? And what's the vision for space combat supposed to be?
I think the first thing we need to talk about is moving away from time to kill and move towards time to disable. Because in the PU, ships are not always going to explode, but we want you to be in that loop of wanting to own your ship. Loss should matter, and we want you to put time and effort into your ship, and that means time and effort into keeping your ship alive, and if something does happen, getting it back.
We've talked about physicalized damage in the
Would
past.
love
Is
that.
this just a matter of getting that physicalized damage system in, or is there more to it than this?
First off, physicalized damage is tied to our Maelstrom system, which you probably didn't know, but we saw for the first time in action for the Squadron demo. All the ships, for example, in the turret sequence were set up with Maelstrom and using our physicalized damage system. We're moving towards more a physically based system that actually works out the speed of the projectile, the collision, and then generates the force, and that force then dictates the damage that's associated with the ship itself. And what that means is that opens up a whole new area of gameplay for piracy, taking those ships back, repairing, going back to your ship, to actually either take it back to your own crafting hangar to be able to dismantle it for resources, or if you're the pirate itself, you can actually take it to the council and get your own ID on there. But ultimately, while we have soft death in the game right now, that's kind of a faked soft death. It's kind of just a slightly move in that direction, but it's not the full physicalized system that we've been working on for a long time. When John says loss matters, it's something we need to start talking about. If I have lost my ship and it does take a long time to get back, how does that impact me if I'm playing the game? What happens if that's my only ship? And I think that's where we need to start thinking about a more complex algorithm to deal with insurance claims and how you get your ship back. And then that directly ties into the TTK or TTD, time to disable, for us to be able to get these ships back. So if you think of, say, starter ships or ships that are small in nature, so like an interceptor or some of our small racing ships, those ships should be, like I said in the 1.0 talk, should always be readily available. So if you lose those ships, we don't really want to punish the player. It needs to be a symbiosis where loss matters and it needs to be impactful to your game experience, but it can't be so impactful that it stops you playing the game. Then it essentially curves up towards the more extreme scenarios. We need to have this almost agile algorithm that basically allows us to work out, like, okay, how many times have you lost your ship in the last hour? Does this player have only one ship on their account? How do we take that into account to make the player experience fair?
Of course, that's the ultimate penalty, loss of your ship. Until that point, we've got features like resource networking, which is the beginning of this time to disable, this extending the length and life of.
Now notice he does say it's the beginning. And I want to interject here again. This is like engineering's not even in live. Live is still a testing environment. Even when they get it past the PTU, it's not permanent. It's not how it's always going to be. There's other features like Maelstrom, escape pods, even just the balancing of engineering that's going to make a difference with all this. I'm not doing this to try and say that they're doing things wrong or it's going in the wrong direction. More so just because they've given all these messages, and even now they're acknowledging all these messages, but they're not quite, I think, doing great at communicating the goal of engineering and the goal of all this stuff simultaneously while they launch engineering. This would have been a great show to have literally this year while engineering was in the PTU, so they could respond directly to how we were feeling about it design-wise. Right now they're responding to our theoretical view of it, but now that we have it in our hands, the communication has been limited mainly just to these patches, these patch notes, which I understand. I wouldn't want to be a dev that steps out in front of this right now. This is an insane gameplay addition, but we kind of all knew it would be, and they're the ones who are pushing it in December
of your ship to make it so that not only does it not explode right away, but the players, the members aboard the ship, have more opportunities to repair the ship. What is that experience supposed to be like on a single player ship? How do we keep that alive longer to the larger ones?
It's a two-way thing. Obviously, time to kill, time to disable is generally thought about as the aggressor's point of view, but it also matters to the victim of this combat encounter. We can't have it be so quick that you have no chance to do anything about that. So with physical damage and resource network, it moves it away from being a just sort of race to zero on the health. Items will start malfunctioning, forcing that person to make a decision of, am I going to flee? Am I going to deal with this now and take the risk? And then on the flip side, that gives you, as the aggressor, the chance to go, what do I want to do with this disabled ship now? Obviously, single seaters have less room for options in this scenario, but really the bulk of that gameplay is on the larger multi-crew ships where you'll be moving around inside your ship, repairing, replacing relays. The engineer will be diverting power to different systems, just to sort of give everybody enough time to decide what they want to do in that scenario. And there's so many different scenarios that can be done.
Sounds like we're building a progression here. Are the larger ships intended to last longer? They have more lifespan. There's more that you can do to keep them alive. Am I sensing this right? Is there a progression here?
Absolutely. I mean, ultimately, we want you to progress in the game and build your fleet, whether that's solo or with a group. You need to be able to have some level of understanding that you're not going to lose it straight away. And the other aspect that I think is really important to see about in terms of when you say progression, it's not just progression for the TTK or TTD for across the entire spectrum of the game, or the progression for the player, the victim or the defender, or versus the attacker. When your ship is disabled, there's no way to bring that back. When we have the proper version where your ship components are gone and utilizing the physicalized damage, you can bring that ship back. And that's the huge difference. And that opens up this entire gameplay loop where you have towing and repair, and maybe somebody can repair it for you. And that's what, they've opened a nearby shop. So they're a repair shop and they give you good chances to repair versus cheaper prices than taking it to an LZ or a space station. So I think when we talk about progression, especially from my perspective, I want to see progression across all the professions. And hopefully people start to see, and it's the reason why we wanted to talk about 1.0, people start to see how all these things connect together. There's a reason why we did all these things over the last 2 or 3 years. It's not like we were just throwing a dart at the dartboard and hoping that, what feature is next. We had, it's that grand plan about trying to bring them all together. But ultimately, we want to be in a position where we can start to focus and connect all of the gameplay systems. And I think this is a key part of that.
Yeah, no, that's really...
Okay. I think that was enough. So you get the gist from this. And, I don't want to draw conclusions on this. Like they're stopping where they are. Obviously, the physicalized damage, there's a lot riding on that. They keep mentioning that as another piece of this puzzle to help ships last longer. And I think the ultimate want and desire everybody, or most people, we won't say everybody, most people seem to have a desire for ships to not blow up as quickly. We all love explosions, but I think a lot of folks would like to see those explosions triggered by something specific, kind of like what Paul Jones was saying, or I think it was Mark Evan, I don't freaking know. One of them was saying during this review is that you want to be able to shoot the power plant in order to make the power plant blow up, or you want to be able to shoot it to disable it and then put it on a timer. There's a lot to take in, and I hope this was a decent summary of the path that we've been going on towards this gameplay, and a little bit of a peek into where it's also headed, or where it's at right now. Keep leaving feedback. I think I think it's all a balance game at this point. It's all figuring out more of the specifics and also communicating a little bit more on where they're headed, because the fact that armor isn't working how armor is supposed to work with the penetration values is, I think, throwing things off a lot as well. Either way, hope you guys got some good info from this.